This brings us to public comment.
Thank you. My name is Tori Champany. I reside at 1820 Burton Street in Beloit. Last time I was in this room, my husband was a teacher in this district, and our 3 kids attended school here. All of those things have changed. My husband teaches in another district, and our kids have transferred due to the lack of in-person learning options in SDB. 2 months ago, my oldest, Marley, started her senior year at BMHS. She loved Beloit Memorial. She was active in Mr. Wallendall's theater program and had taken every AP class option that she could. By October of this year, she was stressed out. She was unmotivated and worried she'd be unprepared for college. It's a tough decision to voluntarily transfer your senior year. She's sad she won't graduate with her classmates. She's sad that she's not taking senior photos in her purple and white. She's sad that she won't graduate a purple night like her dad. She now attends Rock University Charter High School. She will move away to college this summer after she graduates from the Janesville School District. My middle daughter started the school year as a freshman at BMHS. She's an athlete who's been waiting to get to high school and work to be a Purple Night varsity letter winner, like her dad. She couldn't wait to vie for that starting pitcher spot for Beloit Memorial. Just like her older sister, she felt disconnected and isolated. She was not adapting to high school well in a virtual format. Her grades were suffering. Gabby transferred to Turner High School. She still has plans to work hard to become a varsity pitcher. Turns out it will be as a Turner Trojan. Lastly, our youngest daughter, Annabelle, attended 4K, kindergarten, and first grade at Converse. Annabelle struggles with reading. Finishing first grade last school year remotely was a big challenge for her and for me. It put Annabelle further behind. As we approached second grade, I was really worried. She has to be able to read or she'll struggle to write. She'll be too far behind. I could not in good conscience keep her in SDB, knowing that meant virtual school for her. She's too young to sit in front of a screen all day. She simply would not learn the skills that she needs. Annabelle now attends private school at OLA in person. She is thriving. Reading is still challenging, but guess what? My baby can sit and read a book to me now. In fact, she just asked me this week for an empty notebook because she's gonna write a chapter book. It's called A Christmas Disaster, and I think it'll be a bestseller. Had I left her to be virtual here at SDB, I would have failed her. I would have been setting her up to be so far behind. My children come from a home where their dad is a teacher. I'm a cancer researcher. I was a classroom mom. I ran for the school board on more than one occasion and served as PTO president. In other words, we were very involved. My kids had a lot of advantages, yet all 3 really struggled with virtual learning in very different ways. What about the kids that don't have the same support? Beloit kids shouldn't have to leave this district to get what they need like my 3 did. So many kids and families are counting on you. They need you to advocate for their education. Don't let them down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have Kathy Churchill.
My name is Kathy Churchill. I live at 1541 Highland. My kids went to OLA till 8th grade, so I had huge concerns and worry about Beloit Memorial, considering they were in small classes. But I love the school. I love the teachers. And then when we went virtual, I spent hundreds of dollars in tutors. The kids need to be in person, or I will advocate for my kids to be online and pull them from the district. I have athletes. They're excellent athletes. They will have to play club. That's all we have available. My daughter plays volleyball with 350 girls, 3 nights a week. Tournaments on Sunday, 0 COVID. 100% participation for all safety precautions put forth by club. I know several other kids that have their kids in club. No COVID. They're following procedures. I was hopeful the end of January they would be back. I don't have that feeling that Beloit is going to be back. If not, there's hundreds of parents that need to get something in place because they will not have the kids be online. I mean, we all talk about it, we all see it on social media, and the mental health of these kids skyrocketed in the last 2 months because they thought they were coming back to school. So I don't know if you're not telling them or you want to bring little groups. It doesn't work that way. Beloit is a huge community. They all want to come back. They're going to not come back. They're going to unenroll, they're going to get jobs, and you will never be able to find them to get them back in school. They see it every day. They all talk. They're working full-time at Walmart. They're working full-time at Costco. They're helping their parents pay bills. They're putting food on the table. You are not going to get them back if something doesn't come up at the end of January. So winter sports, if we don't have winter sports, then we don't have spring sports. Is that the plan? Because if that is the plan, then I want to prepare and put my kids somewhere else. So that's why I'm here. I've been up since 2 a.m. because I work a lot, but I care, not just about my kid, but all the kids and the parents who can't be here because they're working horrible jobs, trying to get their kids online when they get home from working all day and they can't be here. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Next, I have Christine Rawley.
Good evening, members of the school board. My name is Christine Rawley, and I am a resident of Beloit. I would like to thank you for holding this meeting in person, as I believe it gives people of our community a chance to really let their unique voice be heard, especially in hard times, like where we find ourselves now. My comment this evening is regarding in-person learning for the children here in the Beloit Public Schools. I want to ask you to allow families to have a choice for the method of their child's learning, in person or remotely online. I have 3 nieces who attend a school a few blocks away from my house, just over the border in South Beloit, Illinois. Except for the last 2 weeks, the South Beloit Public Schools have been open for in-person learning. My nieces were given an invaluable choice to attend school this year in person or remotely online. And yet, also just a few blocks from my house is an elementary school that hasn't given families the option of in-person learning this year. For so many children in our community, our Beloit Public Schools are their only source of stability, consistency, and for some, safety. Not every family, not every student is okay. I know that this is a very heavy decision that you have in your hands. The decisions that have been made and that will be made for the rest of the school year are truly leaving an impact that will have a ripple effect in the lives of our students for the rest of their lives. My heart aches for the students needing that safe place, needing that one place of some kind of stability that they can find through our schools. I urge you, for the sake of the families and students that are struggling and not okay right now, due to having no option for in-person learning, give families in our community the choice to return to our schools in person or attend remotely online. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, can you please state your address before you go? I'm sorry. Thank you.
I live at 1518 Euclid Avenue.
Thank you so much.
And then I have Pam Charles.
Good evening. I'm Pam Charles, 2227 Carnforth Place. I'm here to talk about this national emergency. I'm sure you've all heard it called a national emergency, and it is. That is no exaggeration. What we're doing to kids here, they will never recover from, and no one can convince me otherwise. You talk about equity on the board. I sat there when we closed schools back on March 15th. It's been 9 months. We have kids here, 80% of them, on free and reduced lunch. 80% of these kids in this district can't afford food. They don't have parents at home to help them. And we don't have them in our schools. We're not providing what they need. We have told this community we will provide daycare, food, clothing. We even do laundry at the high school. All of that in addition to an education. Now we've ripped it all away from kids and we're not even educating them. This online thing is maybe working for a handful of kids. But when's the last time you packed a room like this? I mean, you've got people on the overflow. We don't get people to come out like this unless they really care, unless they're concerned. Their kids are hurting. Kids in this district are hurting. Every day we hear about a kid that has committed suicide, not in Beloit, but somewhere in this country. A kid is shot or hung by himself because kids are not resilient. Kids don't have the tools we have. They don't have the tools for resiliency. They can't say, I'm gonna do this today. I'm gonna do this evening to relax. They're they don't have control, okay, over the situation like we do. So we need to stop saying kids are so resilient. We need to realize that little brains in a 4-year-old are growing and they need certain things that they are not getting now. They're not getting them because we're not giving it to them. They can't get it through a computer. And I mean, I read the statistics in the Beloit Daily News. I read where something like 50% of the 4K kids are going and participating. That actually pleased me because the worst thing we can do to these little 4-year-olds is to put them in front of a screen. All of you know that's not healthy. We had that Dr. Dipesh Nefsaria come down and give lectures to us at the Eclipse Center about kids. He is against this screen, this technology for 4-year-olds. It is not healthy what we're doing for these kids. It is not healthy for them. And it's got to grab your attention more than the strategic plan, okay? That can wait. Get the kids in school. The strategic plan, sure, that has to happen, but that's in normal times. Right now, I am shocked that the board doesn't have one goal that says get the kids back in school. I tuned into your goal writing board meeting, I think back in July, and I was waiting for someone to say we need a goal to get the kids back in school. Not one. Because if you'd have set that goal, then you could have told your administration, look, here's our goal, get the kids back in school, and put it on them, and it would have happened. But if the board doesn't set the goal, it doesn't happen. And we know that, okay? We've had how many in-services from WASB about how to be a board, how to set goals, how to make things happen in your district. You all shouldn't be even involved in this. You should just have set the goal and turned it over to your administration. There are parents here that want to help. We met with the superintendent months ago and offered to help. There are experts that can help. You need to start paying attention to the science, okay? The CDC, the Harvard School of Public Health, Dr. Fauci, NIH, the American Academy of Pediatrics that say this is a national emergency and we must get the kids back in school. Harvard School of Public Health said, looking at our statistics at a meeting online, on a Zoom meeting about 2 weeks ago, said you can have your kids back in school. You just need to take the right measures to do it. So, I mean, I had this whole thing here that I didn't end up reading at all because I think the most important thing is for you all to remember that it is up to you to set the goal to make all this happen. We don't want to hear things like we have to reimagine the relationships, we have to do better, we have to exercise radical creativity, find new partners to help kids in ways we haven't looked at before. We don't have time for that. These kids will not recover. Thank you, Kyle. I just want to say, get the kids back in school because there's only one thing that will help these kids get out of poverty, and that is an education. So please, do what we're here for, set your #1 priority, and get the kids back when we said they would, January 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have for the in-person speaking.
Okay, any emails?
Yes,
Okay.
I have several. The first one I have is from Mackay Horton. I hope I said that name correctly. I'm a senior this year at BMHS, and I am emailing this comment on the behalf of all my senior classmates that also feel like our school and the district as a whole has shown little, if no zero remorse to our class. It's hard being a senior this year without a doubt, with emails after emails of traditional senior events being canceled due to the obvious issue with COVID-19. We all understand the normal way of doing things will be different for now on, but it does not give us an explanation as to why no one has even tried to do anything to show us students that someone cares about what we are going through. So I just want to let the board know that us seniors and other grades are having a tough year like no other, and it would be greatly appreciated if someone with a title like school board member showed they cared too. The next one I have is from John Acom, citizen. Good evening. With respect to pursuing the DPI waiver, I would never support diluting the requirements that we must meet in order to successfully educate our kids. While I understand that some parts of the curriculum might be sacrificed because of the challenges of remote instruction, I do not believe that the overall core standards should be compromised. There is an understanding that learning in a virtual setting is not as good of a product as in-person education. If we choose to devote the time normally used for regular instruction in art, music, physical education, health, etc., to additional instruction in core curriculum, this might be a good idea. Please remember that the kids who need the most help are often those most impacted by the diminished educational experience of virtual learning. As for reopening, I know that there are no easy or universally accepted answers. Right now, there is much conversation about priorities in administering the new coronavirus vaccine. One of the many ideas currently being tossed around is prioritizing immunizing educators as a way to get kids back into schools. If this happens, it won't take place until sometime in the first quarter of 2021. If at that time we are open or thinking about opening, I believe strongly that every educator without exception must be vaccinated. This must be a condition of employment. This will be the most effective way to win the trust of our students' families. Naturally, this commitment to vaccination must be accompanied with the usual appropriate practices in every building, such as sanitizing and social distancing. Thanks for the opportunity to comment, John. The next comment I have is from Cheryl Hengeveld, a Beloit resident. I have worked in the district as a substitute teacher for many years. I have hesitated to speak out at these meetings because of the professional connections and friendships I have made with teachers, staff, and administrators. I know there is a great deal of Beloit pride within the faculty, and I don't want my former colleagues to take it personally if I speak out against the district. I would like to state unequivocally that the teachers, staff, and administrators are some of the most amazing, committed, hardworking, caring, wonderful people I know, and they go above and beyond for their students. They truly care and work so hard with the tools they are given to do the best they can for their students. That said, the decision by the board to refuse to get kids back in school is unacceptable. I don't believe you as a board want to open at all, ever. Schools are open in person around the country and around the world right now. Children are not at risk, and they are not significant vectors. The data and the studies are there if you choose to look for it. Schools can be open safely, and parental choice between virtual and in-person would allow staff and the students with risk factors to be protected by choosing virtual. Your refusal to reopen hurts the district's disadvantaged and at-risk children the most. Children who speak Spanish as a second language, homeless children, children of single mothers, special education students, hungry children, abused children. The despair, the suicide, the loneliness should speak to you even if the lack of a real education doesn't. I personally know many students that simply don't log on or do any work at all. It's a joke to them. You are turning the achievement gap into a canyon. Children at risk from falling through the cracks are now pushed over a cliff by you. I believe that the decision to refuse to try to reopen is coming from the teachers' union, and if you have your way, school will be virtual forever, and this is simply a transition to the permanent virtual model. I suspect one or two board members would like to open in person, but they are drowned out by the majority. I challenge the entire board to prove me wrong and show us that your number one goal is a quality in-person education. Unfortunately, nothing you have done since March remotely suggests that your goal is to get kids back in school. I would like to tell the parents of children in the district that there is one thing and one thing alone that will make this board sit up and pay attention to you, and that is money. The district gets around $8,000 per student per year, more for special ed students. I am calling on you to pull your students from school if the board refuses to open in person. Homeschooling is a wonderful option. Apply for a spot at Lincoln. Open enroll at Janesville, Turner, or Bridges Virtual Academy. Apply for school choice vouchers for Rock County Christian or OLA. I unenrolled my children as soon as I had heard they were refusing to open while schools all around us were at least trying to open in person. I won't even consider ever letting the district get another penny for my children unless they open in person. Money is literally the only way they will listen to us instead of the teachers' unions. I will make it my mission to tell everyone I know with kids in the district to homeschool, open enroll, or use school choice vouchers for a private school until the board decides to reopen. The other thing that we as parents can do to make a difference is to vote these board members out in the upcoming election. Remember, their priorities were not with your children. Lastly, I would like to address the students in the district. I am so terribly sorry for what's happening. I want you to know that there are thousands of parents here in the district that care about you and are fighting on your behalf to get you back in school. Please hang in there and know that even if the board doesn't care about you and your needs, there are many of us who do. Thank you very much for your time. Cheryl Hangveld, Beloit resident. I have two more. The next one I have is from Dorothy Harrell, 2284 Boulder Court. As you begin to work on your cultural diversity training in your capacity as board members duly elected by a diverse community and begin your review of Policy 511 on affirmative action and equal opportunity, I would call your attention to two articles that appeared in our local newspapers. On December 2nd, an editorial appeared in the Beloit Daily News endorsing the words you heard from Tasha Bell, a former employee pushed out under the last administration who, in my opinion, targeted people of color. Your decision to proceed with implicit bias training is a good one. Hopefully it will help begin a new era in Beloit Public Schools in their relationship with minority communities. I would then like to call your attention to an article in the Janesville Gazette that appeared the following week. In that article, Chief of Police David Moore is quoted as saying they can have all kinds of training, but if it doesn't affect culture, the belief system, the vision, the values of the organization, it really isn't going to have an effect we can see in our community. Both thoughts taken together start to lay a foundation for the thinking that must go forward to help this board enter into cultural bias training and to be open to examining your individual role and thoughts and how this impacts the functioning of this board and your impact of teaching and learning. Why is this so important? As you know, what students learn or don't learn in school can have a huge impact on how they understand the world and their role in society. Students receive lessons at home, but their major interaction with others occurs at school. Whatever you model or put forward for staff impacts students. A policy on paper without execution is useless. Adopt policies you know are important to have and then put processes in place to fully implement them. What you do or don't do in regards to policies sends a clear message about what you value. How you present yourselves to the community also sends a message. The comments that Tasha Bell identified are classic examples of microaggression. You may not say a name, but everyone will know when they are being called out with stereotypes and racial overtones. How is this translated in classrooms? In staff meetings and in classrooms, those who receive similar remarks are impacted negatively and harmed by words that wound. Like it or not, you are role models for students and staff. On another note, please consider taking a deep dive into the district's organization chart to assess if how we are organized is really a reflection of what is needed to move the district forward. One glaring example for me is the leftover titles and major functions. Much of what we see now was the old board and old superintendent on their rant to remove people of color from higher level positions. We were told we did not need an HR director so the district could push out a young black female, Tracy Carradine, and then immediately hired an HR specialist and combined business services and human resources. I think you will find that most organizations would reject that combination as removing checks and balances that are needed for accountability, and that requires two autonomous individuals. This is one change I want to advocate for you to consider. Along with that, I find that adding the word equity to every title effectively removed that work from BPS. To my knowledge, none of the equity committees I was on have ever been convened. Just recently, the Scholarship Committee, Grow Your Own, a minority scholarship committee, finally met at the insistence of a staff member who had been on the committee. The first action proposed by an administrator who had not previously been a part of the committee was to take away the designation as a minority scholarship program. These are examples of why I'm looking to this board to conduct business in a new way. We voted for you. We voted for change. As a minority member of this community, I hope to not hear again any board member be treated dismissively due to ideas in opposition to someone else. Schools have been designated as the free marketplace for ideas. When we teach students critical thinking, we do not teach them to dismiss what others have said, but instead to do intelligent inquiry. As that article in the Beloit Daily News stated, this is about effective group dynamics and how board members interact with each other. Working together based on trust and respect is key. Thank you. And the last one I have is from Joe Obenetter. He said that the following statement is also from coaches who feel the same way, such as Brian Deneau, Joe Clothier, Shane Bouch, Paul Donovan, Brad Dement, and Rob Douglas. I am asking you and other board members to strongly consider voting to reopen our schools to at least a hybrid model. It is my understanding that we cannot begin athletics unless we are in-person instruction. As you know, other close districts in Rock County are at least trying a hybrid model and athletics. In fact, some are encouraging student athletes to learn virtual, but attend practice in person. So it is working where schools are virtual and can still come in and do athletics. Protocol has been in place since August to bring athletes in the building in small groups and train, yet we have not. The Milton School Board just voted to have athletics last night. We are now the only school district in Rock and Walworth County to not conduct some type of in-person training, patience, competitions for our students. It is really frustrating for my son to not be in school and playing sports. If we could transfer, we would. If we say we need to do what is best for our kids, then ask them. They will tell you it is to get back in school and back on a team or club where they can be part of something special. I appreciate what you do, and I know it is a hard job. Thanks for listening. Joe Obenetter, Converse teacher and BMHS coach. And that concludes what I have.
Thank you. So 5B is our student board member report from Mr. Kana Wong, who has waited so patiently.
Good evening. As per usual, I've surveyed the high school and the 4 middle schools. This month I saw a slight decline in responses, but I think that might be a result to how closely these surveys were conducted to the last ones. The key takeaways from these surveys are that kids have a fair amount of time on their hands, with about 66% of high schoolers admitting to having over 4 hours a day of leisure time, and that kids need to be made more aware of the opportunities that the community has for them, such as tutoring or places to study without any distractions. I'm choosing not to focus much on the results gathered by the surveys this month, but more on the responses gathered in the opinions and questions write-in box. Last month, I had about 20 serious written responses from the high schoolers. Some were asking questions about sports, school, or schedules. Some helped to give me better ideas of what questions I should be asking in my future surveys, and many of them focused on or questioned the mental health of our students and how the district was providing help last month. This month, I received nearly triple the responses, nearly all of which were negative. Students are getting angry. Students do not understand why they're being kept fully online with no options for in-person anything. To the students who voice their opinions, it's clear to see that they're frustrated by the seeming lack of compromise that they've received in comparison to students from other schools. Many potential options for hybrid models in sports were also given, many of which I'm sure you have looked into or can see in other schools around our area. Seeing friends from other districts have the option of participating in sports or getting to see their friends in the classroom appears to be extremely frustrating. Why are students falling behind or doing worse in their classes? The surveys thus far have shown that it's generally not due to a lack of time, but should be more closely associated with a lack of motivation. While there were a handful of students expressing wishes to stay online, these students were in the vocal minority, and assuming a hybrid model would be put in place, would most likely not attend the in-person options. Whether we're looking into compromises for term 3 or not, the students would appreciate better communication regarding any plan for moving forward and would hope for some opportunities to open up in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kana, very much. That brings us to 6B, the update on so it's been changed to 6A, the update on reopening of school model.
Thank you, Board President Larson. So it's perfect that it's coming right after the student board update. So as the change in the policy was made last month, the I was asked to make sure that bring forward an updated model to the board so that the board could provide input and then support through board vote. So working with the administration and reaching out to the BEA, I provide tonight, it's a total of 8 slides, but it's really about 6 substantive slides updating the model. So I'm not going to go back through everything that was done in July. I will summarize and then provide the new information in the next 6 slides here. However, I will just start off with the priorities that we laid out at the beginning of the year, which still talks about student and staff safety and following the guidance from our Rock County Health Department, the City of Beloit, the CDC, and other health professionals. Focusing in on the social emotional supports for students, families, and staff, curriculum and instruction, as well as the overarching goal around building and delivering on a comprehensive model that not only has our instruction in mind, but prioritizes the safety of our students and staff. I thought it was important that providing context for the conversation and context for the subsequent recommendations and a couple of board considerations is the context of what COVID is like both in our county as well as within the district. And while the graphs are small and it's not as important to see the scales, what is important is to see the overarching shape of the graphs. Our county data that is reported, and if anyone wants to see this data, they can go to the Rock County Health Department, and all of the data that is being provided is taken directly off the Rock County Health Department COVID pages. The Rock County Health Department has moved to a model of active cases per 10,000. This provides an opportunity for communities of different sizes to be compared side by side so that communities can see whether or not there are more active cases in one community versus another. It's different than the positivity rate that we started with. As of today, the positivity rate in the Rock County community is 29.9% on a 14-day average. And the Rock County active cases is 89.9 per 10,000 people. When we think about all of the school districts that are in Rock County, that's the graph that you see there with each of the lines. And the key takeaway is that Beloit is not an outlier as compared to other districts around us in Rock County. In fact, if you could blow up the graph, the upper line is the Clinton School District, and the bottom line coming up from the bottom is the Parkview School District, and we're right in the mixed in the middle there. On the other side, what you see is our district, a graphical representation of our district data. So every day we require our staff to fill out a screener. And as part of the screener tells each staff member if they are okay to come to work or if they should remain at home, and it sends an alert to our school nurses and health room assistants, and they follow up. If the follow-up requires a staff member to stay home and quarantine, it is more often than not a preventative tool. And so even with our screener and a preventative tool, you can see that the graphical representation is similar to that of the county. This screener has been what has kept our overarching positivity rate within the school district low. In fact, at our highest rate, as we released in a news update or a press release before Thanksgiving break, the district was at 1.9 of active positive cases within the district. So how does that context provide to update to our model? When I presented the model back in July, we said that parents and families would have one of two options. They could select the Beloit Virtual School, which continues and will always continue to be an option for a fully virtual experience. However, it is on a platform that is different from our classroom teachers. Or families could select an option which did in July switch between either an in-person instructional model or a distance learning instructional model. And at that time, the decision was made to start in distance learning. While that overarching decision has not changed, one question that was asked back in July was, would there be an option if we were to move in person to still allow for distance learning as we currently have been operating since the beginning of the school year? And at that time, I've said to the board that I did not feel that we had the capacity to provide that option. I sit before you today to say that through the work of the teaching and learning team, the pupil services team, and the buildings, there is an option that does now exist for the distance learning to continue if we were to switch to an in-person instructional model, and hence why there's an asterisk there. So if there was an in-person instructional model that was approved, we would move into a cohorting model. That cohorting model essentially would say that we would split our school district in half and having two groups, a group A and a group B, where the first group would come to school the first half of the week. Wednesday would still be a PD day like we currently have set up, and then group B would come the second half of the week. Now, the difference comes in what's happening to the groups that are at home. With the technology that we are leveraging and some additional technology that we could add to supplement the distance learning work that we've been doing from our classrooms, we could simulcast our instruction from the classroom to the home. This would allow instruction to continue at the same pace that currently is happening in distance learning, while also allowing for small numbers of students to be in the classroom so that we can maintain the 6 feet social distancing that we've established and is still recommended by the CDC and the health department. This also has the added advantage of allowing students and families to make a decision that if they wanted to stay in distance learning but not attend Beloit Virtual School, that would be an option that would be available to them. And if a student needed to quarantine because they would be filling out the screener no differently than our staff, if they needed to be quarantined, they would not miss out on the instruction that would happen day to day in the classroom. So this is the biggest of all of the slides. This is the biggest change from what happened in July and the learning that we've been doing over the past 4 months. This is a culmination of analyzing other school districts and their instructional model that they've started from July or from September all the way through Thanksgiving. As far as operations, we would still be following the same protocols. Food service, we would be providing breakfast and lunch in accordance to the USDA and DPI guidelines. Our meals would still need to be individually packaged, including utensils, to make sure that we are maintaining good best practices. Our busing capacity still has not changed. We would still need to reduce our busing capacity by half. And our obligations, legal obligations for students with an IEP do not change. We still have legal obligations to provide transportation to students who have an IEP and have that as part of their services. We are and have been reaching out to families to talk to them about self-transport, which would also mitigate or lessen the number of students that would need to be bused during this time. So with all of those pieces in place, if an in-person instructional model would come to fruition, then two things would need to happen. We would need to survey our families to see how many would want to maintain a distance learning option, as well as to verify the families who have indicated self-transport, so that we would make sure that we would build our busing and transportation routes, as well as our ensure that all of our schools and social distancing are being maintained. As far as athletics and activities, again, large field trips and gatherings have all been suspended due to just the logistics of travel, and many locations have closed down and still are doing virtual conferences and trips and so forth. Clubs and organizations, while in the fall were taking place off school grounds, if an in-person model were to be a part of that, or small group support was given, clubs and organizations could potentially meet as long as they are meeting all social distancing and safety requirements. Working with our athletic director, Joel Beard, we've been following the Big 8 conference, which has suspended all competitions through basically the semester, so January 25th. Beloit had, Joel has built a staged athletic approach that continues to follow both the WIAA and Rock County Health Department guidance, and basically follows 5 different stages. Currently, while Rock County is in phase 1, we have virtual conditioning, which is not that much different than what was done in the fall. If approved, if the recommendation is approved, once Rock County is out of phase 1, we would be able to open up and have open gyms and continued improvement within the county. Those open gyms would transition into practices, and then competitions would occur at this point when in-person instruction occurs. So that was the model that Joel had developed in collaboration with Ms. Pells and myself, and put in here so that the board and the community would be aware of what that entails. Small group support is something that I have brought to the board for feedback and input on as well. And following same protocols, this would be something working with the principals, could be built out so that if we were not in phase 1, we could start this type of support, focusing in on students of concern. And then again, the question about teacher and support staff volunteers. If we were in a distance learning model and the students of support, students of concern, such as students who are struggling to access Wi-Fi or technology, we would build supports around that.
Dr. Keisha, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but we need to make a motion to extend our meeting time.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I move that we extend our meeting by 30 minutes. And I'd like to make the motion. Can I double our motion like we did last time so we don't have to interrupt again?
Correct.
For an
yes.
hour?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I move that twice, that we extend our meeting by 30 minutes. I second it.
So we have a motion, a second, to make 2 extensions to our meeting, adding an hour. Are there any other questions or comments regarding the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the meeting has been extended. Thank you.
All right. And that gets me right to the heart of the conversation and open it up for conversation here. So the recommendations. So the metrics that were approved back in July are on the far left. Those being transportation, building, and the Rock County COVID. The recommendations that I'm bringing before the board for consideration are these 4 things. That given our current situation and the metrics that were approved in July, that we would begin term 3 in distance learning, following the practices that have been established in July. That I'd be given the opportunity to work with small group supports and continue to provide regular updates to the board outlined in the presentation, as well as the ability to follow the directions of the Rock County Health Department as it pertains to localized outbreaks. In July, we didn't have language for that. Now we do have language for that when the Rock County Health Department has identified 2 or more positive cases that have the same common endpoint, that common endpoint being, in this case, a school building. They identify a localized outbreak and tell us that staff have to stay away for 14 days. And I would like I'm making the recommendation that we continue to follow that practice. And the 4th one being athletics and activities would follow the stage outline that I presented in this presentation. Those are the recommendations. I also have 2 considerations for the board and to potentially include in those recommendations. And those being have myself bring in January for the board's consideration a phased-in approach for in-person instruction that could take place not at term time, but sometime in the middle of the term. So midterm is meaning in the middle of the term. And then also, if we are in in-person instruction and a school closure is due to staffing shortage, i.e. we don't have enough subs to keep a building open, that I would be able to reopen a school once that staffing shortage was eliminated. I put that in there for our consideration because with the exception of 2 situations in surrounding school districts, all of the other closures within county schools have been because of a shortage of subs and not being able to adequately staff a building and keep the building open while students were coming in person. So with that, I open it up for questions. And I just want to take a brief opportunity to say thank you to all of the individuals that helped put this presentation together. So,
Thank you. And we're going to kind of take a round robin. I've been writing down the names, but we want to try to make sure everyone has the opportunity to speak. Board Member Jacobs was the first board member to raise her hand.
Thank you, Board President Larson. First, a clarifying question, Dr. Kieser. When you say midterm, so you're not referring to the beginning of 3rd quarter? Are you talking in the middle of 3rd quarter for letter A under board considerations?
So the consideration, it would be anytime not at term time. So originally we had discussions around making the decisions only at the end of a term and the beginning of the next term. And that was facilitated because of families who may want to transition to, say, Beloit Virtual Academy or whatnot. Now that we have an in-person model that would allow for distance learning and in-person learning happening simultaneously, the board could consider not having the transitions affixed at those 9-week intervals, but could be at any time.
at any time. Thank you for that clarification. And after carefully listening to comments this evening, as well as discussions I've had on the phone and emails that the board has received, and my own personal belief, I feel very strongly that we need to go to a hybrid as soon as possible after Christmas. I think that if, for example, if we waited till if we started at January 22nd with the hybrid, that would be 3/4 of a year our kids have been out of school. And I truly shudder to think of the social and emotional concerns that haven't been dealt with, the academic slippage that has occurred. I feel very, very strongly that we need to bring the kids back, but I love the idea, and I think it's very necessary to send a survey out to parents and ask what they want and what they need. And then do a hybrid based on what the parents prefer to have. Thank you for listening.
All right, Board Member Anderson.
So I had two questions I thought of. So in order to have the small groups come in, you said that we need to be at least in phase 2. And when you talk about providing support to kids, are you talking about like having just the group of kids coming in and being able to sit in the classrooms and have the teachers sitting there working with them on assignments, or is it actually like a full class? Like they're sitting there while the teacher is doing their normal class?
It would be actual instruction, so they would be instructing in person. So it wouldn't be, there would be work time in class, but it would be actual instruction in class.
Okay, and with your one consideration, I mean, if it goes into phase 2, how quickly do you think that we would be allowing kids to come back into the schools for small group?
If we are in distance learning, the small group model once built out could extend as long as we either don't have a localized outbreak where we would have to shut down, or we transition into in-person instruction, in which case it wouldn't be needed because we would be providing instruction in person.
Then my last question is that one thing I was kind of wondering is, would it be possible, because like as we did when we were having our closed session meeting beforehand, where at the start we recorded the meeting and then we would post it onto YouTube later, is there a way that we could possibly have teachers record their classes like we did, or like our meeting, and then post it online for kids to view on a later day if they missed that class? At least then they can see the interactions that the kids are having. And even if they were in that class, then it gives them the opportunity actually to go back and possibly review something that they could have missed.
So currently with our distance learning, we are recording those lessons, and so working with the teaching learning pupil services team, that has been part of the discussion with the instructional model. So it is possible.
Okay, good. Because I was just like thinking about when I took a college class online, like they had it recorded so that you could always go back and rewatch it.
Correct. So with the consideration, it would be, so the consideration would be to come back and then bring forward exactly the time frame for making a transition like this.
Thank you.
Board Member Leavy.
Thank you. Okay, so statement, and then I'll get to my question. I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse, and I am a bit uncomfortable being asked to approve a model when we don't have what our teaching capacity is or what our student demand level is. I think that those are the first two building blocks where you find that data out and then you go. So on to my question. At our November 24th board meeting, Dr. Kieser, you mentioned that you would like to see a downward trend in hospitalizations and positivity rate. So what is the proposed rate that you would deem acceptable to reopen in a small group or cohort model, which is still a little unclear to me which one you think we should go with, the small groups versus the cohorts that would be, from what you previously said, half of our district. So the positivity rate in June, you stated was 5%. What are you proposing now? And then I would also like to know, how do vaccinations factor into your recommendation? We fortunately are not in a scenario where a vaccination doesn't exist. It's not being rolled out. Like, we can see an end to this. So how does that play a decision in your proposal? And then what specific plans do you have for contact tracing if we were to do some type of a hybrid model?
So if I miss any of them, please let me know. But in terms of the metrics, so the metrics that were approved end of July were our best guess based on an expectation for having a metric, and we are the only school district in Rock County that actually put in a specific metric in terms of the positivity rate. And that was chosen because it was something that was most easily understood and something that was not influenceable by any data that was collected in the school district. It was collected at the Rock County Health Department. So felt that it met the criterion for the transparency that we were looking for back in July. As far as a metric for reopening, I think in the 4 months that we have been operating our schools consistently in a distance learning model, we've seen the growth trajectory of surrounding school districts, and I have met weekly with the Rock County superintendents in the health department and listened to their conversations in regards to running the school districts in a hybrid or in-person model during these past 4 months. And so I think that as long as we're out of phase one, we would see those downward trends, and we would see the ability for us to provide instruction safely. As it pertains to cohort versus small group support, so that support of 10 or fewer students would only exist if we're in a distance learning model. Cohorting would be the model that we would use if we were to transition to in-person. So one would exist only if we were in distance learning. That would be the small group support. And that came from the surveys that we did back in November. The cohorting is our model for in-person instruction because we could not bring all of our students back and still maintain the social distancing guidelines across our district. While some of our schools could do it, not all of our schools. So the model that we settled on for an instructional framework for in-person would be a cohort. So we would immediately say that we would break our district into half, so like A through L and M through Z, and that would be the two groups. Those groups, we would be able to provide social distancing and instruction, while the other group would be remoting in and watching the instruction online. And if families made the decision that even if I was in group A, because I'm in the front half of the alphabet, I still want my kid to be in distance learning full time, that would still be an option available to the family. In which case that would further reduce the number of students that would be coming in person into school. So that would be the difference between those, the cohort and students of support. As far as contact tracing is concerned, we have been doing that already with our staff, our director of school health, Ms. Babilius, and her team of school nurses and health room assistants are the ones who follow up on the screener survey, and they're the ones who do the contact tracing for us within the district. So what we would be doing is be expanding what we're already doing with our staff, with our families, and saying that if a screener survey said to a particular student that they should remain home, that information would automatically be routed to the school nurse or health room assistant to call the family and follow up with them. I believe I answered all three of your questions, but any follow-ups?
Yes. Very quickly, just for transparency with everyone listening, what are the numbers associated with the phases? And you gave us 5% in July, so I'm looking for a number that you are comfortable with the positivity rate. And then also vaccinations. How does that, if at all, play a role in what you are proposing this evening? And then the first thing that I started with, are you asking us to approve a model without having capacity and demand and those two foundational pieces?
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. As far as the vaccination, no, that did not play a factor in the decision. As the information has begun to roll out, they're talking about phases and even taking phase one and breaking phase one into a couple of sub-phases. It is unlikely that vaccinations would occur anytime while this school year is still going on. At the earliest, it would be the summer, going into next fall before we would see enough vaccinations community-wide that we would say that has an impact. So it has not been a factor in that. As far as approving a plan, so the recommendations I bring before the board are based on the things that I know have been approved, and so approving moving to in-person would be to say that we need to move past the metrics that we approved in July and move forward on the guidance and the structures we put in place as far as social distancing and so forth. However, I do have the option for the board to consider, based on our current positivity rate, to start in distance learning, and a consideration for the board to say, bring back a team and a plan for phased in instruction. So I do have an option for the board to take action tonight, and then also provide guidance and further action for the board to act on after winter break.
So I'm still waiting for a percentage that you are proposing. It was 5%. What is that percentage now that you're proposing? And is it still, as you felt in July, like if we were 5% but not trending down, that you weren't then comfortable? And whatever that new number is, does it also have a downward component to it? And then just to be clear, and then we can move on to whoever is next in the queue, you are asking that we approve a model without knowing capacity, i.e. how many teachers we want to be in the building. Are we going to mandate teachers come back into the building? So capacity, and then demand, how many, like a number, like we did a survey, we opened it, and people can decide this is what I want, because without capacity and demand, to me, it feels very frivolous to approve a plan. It feels like putting the cart before the horse. So you can comment on that or not, but I am looking for a number, and then we can move on to whoever is next.
Okay. I can't put a number to this in terms of where things would be. We started with 5%. We have not seen 5% since mid-August. So probably, I forget the actual date. At one point I actually wrote it down, but it was mid-August. That was the last time we saw a 14-day positivity rate at or below 5%. So I don't have a recommendation on a number. If we are going to in-person instruction, we do know which staff have ADA accommodations and would not be returning to in-person instruction because of accommodations that have been approved through HR. If we were to move to in-person instruction, our instruction would still be in person. So the staff would be reporting to the buildings and would be providing instruction from there. If they cannot provide instruction from the buildings, then we would need to get a sub. So that it's the best answer I can provide at this point.
So it sounds like, yes, it will be mandated, and you were comfortable with giving a 5% positivity rate as our threshold, and you are currently not giving, because right now, our last 14-day average, we're sitting at 29.3%. So I just want to be clear with that. You are not comfortable with giving a number for that.
Yes, I'm not comfortable giving a specific number.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Board Member Wong.
Okay, I had a few questions, but most of them were answered. But I do have a statement. It's going to be a little lengthy here, because and what we've learned in the last 4 months, actually the last 9 months, is significantly different. I mean, what we know today is different than what we knew in August, is different than what it was in May. But I'll start here. Over the last year, we have all coped with the COVID pandemic. As we've coped with it, we've experienced a whirlwind of activities, thoughts, and emotions. In late summer, there was a vast discussion about how we were going to approach the new school year with the pandemic in full swing. As a district, we decided to go 100% distance learning for the protection of our students and families throughout the community. As we have progressed through the fall, we have witnessed all schools conducting their school year in much different ways, all involving some form of hybrid approach to bring students into the schools in a safe manner for not only the students, but staff as well. As the number of COVID cases increased over the last several months, potentially peaking out in the middle of November, we have seen a dramatic drop down in the last month. Surprisingly, this all took place during a time when most would have thought it was spiked higher. I truly believe as a community, everyone has become much more aware of the danger of this virus and taking it more seriously than earlier in the year. It's nice to see the graphs clearly available on the Rock County Health Department website showing the dramatic drops over the last month. Now we are in the very early stages of vaccination distribution. I believe it's critical that the board looks at the second semester in a different manner. It is no secret that the distance learning model has accommodated a lot of learning needs for our students and quite honestly provided them with an experience that will be invaluable for years to come. In a sense, we have forced our students to become much like college students, having to manage their own time and schedules in a manner that is not normal for elementary and secondary education students. Unfortunately, we have also experienced many negatives for all of our students, including isolation, mental illness issues, technical challenges, family responsibilities, lack of normal support options available if they were in person, less coverage of the necessary curriculum to allow for proficiency, the ability to check out even if they appear on a screen to be present, zero extracurricular activities, which provide greater outlets for social interaction, along with all the other benefits that would included, or that would bring for our students' well-being. These are a few of the issues our students have experienced over the last few months. As we look forward to the next semester, I believe we need to implement at minimum a hybrid model with the eventual move to in-person. I understand this will bring along a vast number of changes from the current environment, but if we are truly going to live up to our mission, preparing and inspiring every student to succeed in life and contribute to an ever-changing world, we have to provide a better platform. As we all know, our district has historically been behind in the area of academics, and it should come as no surprise to any of us that this year it will create an even greater achievement gap than we've had in the past. The impact of this year will likely affect all our students for many years to come. Let's not continue to make it worse. I would also question how we are going to measure the proficiency of our students as we move forward, and what steps are we going to take to make sure they are prepared before passing them on to the next grade? Or are we just going to socially promote them just because they are a year older and ultimately not provide them the necessary knowledge and skills to succeed in life? I realize there are many who will disagree with moving back into the buildings during this pandemic and would just like to see us wait until everyone is vaccinated before we begin any form of in-person instruction. I understand there are those who fear for health reasons this is not the best option for our children, their families, staff, or administration. This is where I would expect administration, just as we've been presented tonight, with a plan which I would support a hybrid model at the bare minimum, as I'd mentioned, but this would also include safety precautions necessary to keep everyone as safe as possible, but allowing for in-person instruction. There should also be very little tolerance, if any tolerance, for those unwilling to abide by these precautions, be it staff, students, administration, or parents. Everyone has to take personal responsibility to do their part to make any form of in-person instruction as safe as possible. If not, we will have alternatives. School District of Beloit is the only district in the entire county that has been 100% distance learning for the entire school year. While I agree that this was the best option at the beginning of the year, now we know more about the virus, safety precautions, which have proven effective, and seen other schools develop effective ways to provide in-person instruction. We need to move in this direction to provide all of our students the best educational experience we can offer them as we head into the next semester. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to add that I would like to see us go back with a hybrid at the beginning of term 3, at least a hybrid. I think it's been too long. We have something for everybody. If you, especially the dual language kiddos who want to, that option isn't available for them in virtual, they have the option to still continue distance learning mode with their teachers. Teachers and staff members who have those health concerns that can't be in face-to-face, they're able to do the distance learning model. Families who absolutely don't want to come back under our circumstances still have the virtual, and those families and staff members who want to come back have the face-to-face option. So there's something for everybody. I mean, there's nothing here that would make anybody unhappy. There's a total mix from one extreme to the other. Board Member Delgado.
I'm not going to be as long as John. That was an awesome speech, John, by the way. Thank you. I want to say thank you. Thank you to Dr. Kieser. Thank you to all the staff members that were involved. It's been a very long 9 months. I think those 9 months have given us the opportunity to learn, to review what's going on, what's happening. And like John said, 9 months ago, it's totally different than today. Numbers are high, yes, but they have given us the opportunity to see what other districts are doing. And like John said, we're the only district that has gone distant learning. And I don't regret that at all. I don't, because it has given us the opportunity, to learn and to see trends and to see what's going on and what's doable. And it has given our administration team the opportunity to review all that data and to come up with this really awesome plan. Cohort, I think it's a great way to go because it takes into account, the different opportunities for those that want to go just, distance learning as we have been going right now, but with an actual, instruction of their teachers. And then it gives the opportunity for those students that have been waiting so long, to come back to school and have that face-to-face interaction. I'm a parent. I know the struggles. I have a 15-year-old that has been struggling through the whole, and I have amazing teachers too that have been right there with us, but still the struggle is there. I understand those people that are scared of coming back to school, but there's that option for them. But then there's also that option for those that are ready to go back to school. With the cohort plan that Dr. Kieser is presenting, we're going to have less than 50% or less people attending school. So that gives opportunity to have smaller groups coming into the schools. It's not like we're going to have everyone coming back. You have that, I think there's so many things that have been considered in this plan, where if people get, are exposed or whatever, they're able to stay home and do their distance learning without missing out on any of that. So I thank you for providing this awesome plan. As far as the question about percentages, I just want to ask if you're thinking about, because I totally understand that you want to go based on the guidelines of the CDC and also the public health through the county. So is the plan to be, once we were able to move into phase 2, then we would go ahead and launch this plan? Is that what you're proposing, Dr. Kieser?
So, yes, I have, as part of the proposal for, especially with athletics, is tied to staying out of phase 1 and going into phase 2. Unless the board decided to alter those conditions or those recommendations. In part, if, for instance, as the example, if there was a board motion to move towards a hybrid, or in this case, the cohort in-person model with the simulcasting, and that occurred while not in phase 2, I would want the board to consider the athletics and the instruction at the same time, because competition, the phased-in approach that Mr. Beard developed was based on competitions beginning when we had the opportunity for in-person instruction. So in that case, I would want to make sure that we would tie those things together. If the board's consideration was to say we would move to in-person instruction when we move out of phase 1, then that would be the new metric, and we would be saying instead of a 5% metric, we would be saying as long as we're not in phase 1 based on the Rock County Health Department's plan, then that becomes the new metric for in-person instruction.
One more question. Are you aware of how many districts are currently doing in-person instruction, even though we're on phase 1?
In Rock County?
In Rock County.
All of them except for us.
Thank you. What is keeping us from doing that? Why do we have to wait for a number? I had. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to get, Vice President Miller hasn't had a chance to speak on this yet, and then we have students who would like to speak before we go into board members having a second turn. So Vice President Miller, please.
Thank you so much. So I'll just a couple of brief comments. I guess as a parent too, I want to thank everybody for putting these plans together dating back to July. We have also been, we have our own struggles like everybody else too, but my kids and I really appreciated the consistency of being able to get used to this virtual learning. Even my kiddo who really struggles in school, that consistency has really helped. So I just really want to express some gratitude for that. I have a couple of questions. If we are going to simulcast elementary school, I have a daughter in kindergarten and a daughter in third grade. The thing that's working really well for us, especially with some kind of learning needs that one of my kids has, is the ability to interact asynchronously. And I'm concerned a little bit about I'm concerned about putting our elementary school students in the cohort model in front of a screen. Would it be like in front of the screen for 7 hours? Or I'd like to hear a little bit more about how the cohort model is going to work with our younger students, because I do fully agree. I think the screen time can be really tough, and I like being able to kind of break it up throughout the day. So can I ask that question first and then come back to a couple more?
Certainly. In terms of a little bit of insight, I have my executive director team with me, and they've been a part of the conversation. So Ms. Moratek, who's the executive director of teaching and learning, I know has been a part of the conversations with the directors in teaching and learning and the building principals. So can talk in kind of the broad brush strokes in terms of that. I know that there are refinements to the plan as we've been trying to collect all of our information since the beginning of term 2. Ms. Martek.
Good evening. Director Miller, I think the best way to describe it is to think about that a lot of that interaction in teaching happening on the days that students are there face to face, and then students that are at home are engaged in the activities and they're following along, but really then it flips from day to day, right? So a lot of that discussion and so forth happens in that face-to-face time, and then that group comes and goes, and then it sort of flips. To the point about the screen time, I think that's been a concern, to your point, since the very beginning of all of this, right? Since last spring, and what does screen time mean for our kids? And so where it may not be ideal, we have to be flexible in the way in which we're thinking about it too. And so all of that hasn't been detailed out, but I do think that there's a way that we can structure the days so that kids that are at the at-home time during that face-to-face and cohort model are having breaks. And so we would just have to think about how to structure that, especially in a K-5 classroom. You know, in a face-to-face situation, a K-5 teacher gives students lots of breaks, right? You shouldn't be expecting a little one to sit, whether they're in your home or in your classroom, for an hour. You just naturally give lots of breaks. And so, and that can even be breaks as far as standing up, being kinesthetic, not just completely stopping instruction. So yes, there's more to talk about in that regard, and that's a really good question. But I also think we have to be flexible in what's ideal.
So I guess the follow-up to that is I'm curious because I'm aware of other districts that are using a similar model where some kiddos come in certain days and others, and then they kind of like the off days are like the asynchronous days. so that the times that the kids are in, like for the elementary school students, when they're in elementary school, like live, like in person, with the reduced number of students, right, because of the AB, the days that they're at home or whatever caregiver's location, they're working through asynchronous stuff. So they're like doing whatever, like hands-on arts and craft, like whatever it is that we do, and like the curriculum that we've had so far at Todd has been outstanding. Like all of the things that have been sent home, I mean, it's been great. But, and I think part of what's made it so great, especially for like the kindergarten level experience, like direct experience that I've had, is that we're able to like do what you said and like break up the day, and even the live lessons, like they do the kinesthetics and stuff, and that's great. I guess like what I would like to see, and I appreciate how concise the plan is, but before I would be really comfortable adopting this as a model, I think I would just need to see a little bit more, I would just need more information on like the accommodations that we're making for our kids who are like neurodiverse, kids who don't have, I mean, there are a lot of different considerations to make that are developmentally specific to kiddos. I do think that there's a good way that we can phase into in-person, but I'm particularly concerned about kind of what I'm hearing so far, I guess, with our elementary students. So I guess that's kind of one of the questions. And I was going to roll into the other one without even pausing, so I apologize. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add, or?
No, I'll just take notes and then work on getting back to you too if you want any follow-up.
Oh yeah, that would be terrific. I think
okay.
You'd all probably want to know. I'm assuming other board members would be interested too.
Yeah, and just any like multimodality type of learning is happening right it should be happening or being discussed in a virtual environment as well.
Yeah,
so,
and it's been going really well. Like I think in the distance learning model, like there are the breaks throughout the day. There's like the kind of, like I know all of those songs by heart. They're amazing. So I'm going to miss them when I go back because I'm on EFMLA right now, and then it'll be a whole different story. But I mean, I think a lot of us, I mean, the whole challenge here and what we're hearing from our students and people who are concerned across the board is that we have complex issues because like every person's like circumstances are so unique. So it's very difficult when we talk about the health and well-being of every child. That looks very different for every child in some cases. And of course there are generalizations we can make, but that's kind of why I'm asking these questions, because I want to make sure we can find a good path forward that really will suit everybody's needs as best as we can during a pandemic. So thanks. I guess I want to come back to the issue of the metric. I think that conceptually, overall, I really like the plan in terms of starting out in a phased reentry. I don't think it's reasonable to ask school teachers and administrators to have collaborated and communicated effectively with parents and their students and their staff to immediately start at term 3. I think that would be awesome if we could, but I don't see that it's reasonable, and I appreciate that Dr. Kieser built that into the model that he's presenting tonight. So I guess my question there would be, in order for this to be as clear as possible, because consistency is so important, because families need to be able to make plans and understand what they need to do for what's best for their kids, I would not be comfortable approving a model tonight without a hard metric for like what is okay in terms of small groups and like what is okay in terms of a shift into a cohort model. So it seems to me that we've done an excellent job as a district so far collaborating with our county health department. And I know Dr. Kieser, you listed a lot of different partners, and I would encourage you, if we could continue that track of coming up with some kind of like a multi-measure metric that considers the, I'm going to say this probably wrong, but like the per capita, like the every 10,000 people piece, something that considers the hospitalization rate and hospital capacity in the area. Like I think there are a lot of factors that we have to take into consideration. And I'd love to hear it if you have some thoughts on that tonight, but I'm wondering if perhaps it would be wise to take this under consideration and postpone a voted approval for the whole model until we see those metrics. So do you have any thoughts on that, Dr. Kieser? And then I just have one more question.
So in terms of hard metrics, you're suggesting like looking at more than just the 14-day positivity, maybe perhaps the cases per 10,000 hospitalizations and others?
I thought that you said in the beginning, and maybe I misheard you, because I thought that you said in the beginning of your presentation that you'd mentioned that we hadn't seen 5% since the middle of August, and that we've learned more about how we do metrics and just kind of coming up with a rate that made sense to kind of what the current experience is here in Rock County and for our families?
Yeah, so been following, the Rock County Health Department's been tracking all of our school district data since the beginning of the school year for each of the districts. So knowing the model for each of the districts, that graph that we started here on the left, we've been the one consistent district that's been doing distance learning this entire time. Every other line that's on there has started either distance and transitioned to in-person or started in person, has remained in person, and has pivoted to distance learning when they've had sub problems or in 2 cases had localized outbreaks. So in looking at that data, those curves could be the data that we look at. And so that's to the earlier question around the 5% metric. I have a hard time providing an answer tonight in terms of any number, simply because of if we take a look at the data holistically, we've been in person because we've had a board approved metric, and that board approved metric we haven't seen. So if we adopt a new metric, that is definitely a decision the board can do. When the question was asked, is there a number? I can't think of a number at this point. The best answer I can provide is if we were to move from phase 1 back into phase 2 in the Rock County plan, that's the best answer I can give at this particular time.
I really appreciate the explanation, because I mean, the whole reason that we've done this, right, the way that we have, is to try to be considerate of the unique needs that our community has versus other communities, the consistency pieces that have gone into play. And I feel like I really appreciated your perspective on, just you seem to share a lot about working collaboratively with the health department and everything. So, I mean, it feels like I really like your plan, and I really like what you propose, because it does give flexibility, it does give choice. It takes what we've learned in these past several months, and it provides a lot of great opportunities, and I want to make sure we do it correctly. So don't take this at all to be oppositional. I would like to see, again, because if I'm a parent, I'm trying to make those plans, am I getting ready to do distance learning, stay at home, or am I needing to go find childcare because now I'm in a year, or change my life situation to send kids back 2 days a week into term 3, whenever that happens, right? So I guess what I would like to ask is that we bring back, or if we could I don't know what the board action will look like, but I would really, really like to see a refreshed look at what metric we would use. And I think teachers and families just need to understand and have a good guidepost for what we're looking at realistically for these options.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. And then I guess my final question would just be about our staff. So I appreciate what you said about capacity. Earlier, I had a similar question that board member Leavy asked about, I love the way you're thinking. This is great ideas. I'm feeling very positive overall, again, about conceptually and the concepts and the options that are available. I'm concerned about not knowing which staff are available and how many and in which buildings and which grade levels. And I also think that we really need to consider that we are asking teachers and staff members, we're not asking them just to do their own duties and their work. We're asking them to potentially expose partners, multi-general living situations, or whatever, people who live with them, to exposure. I mean, I think that that's a really big ask, and I really like to see some consideration about offering options for teachers and taking into consideration not just their own health conditions, but also their living situations, if they have children who are immunocompromised, et cetera. because like our teachers are the people who make education happen, and I'm very proud of our district, and I know our kids are dying, many of our kids are dying to get back in the classrooms with those teachers because of how valuable they are, and I just, they need to be a part of the conversation and some of their needs.
I think we have awesome staff as well, and part of the conversations that we've been having ongoing with the HR department has been around the ADA piece. And so any staff members who at any time have felt like they needed accommodations, because when we set out on approving the model and we made the decision back in July to start with distance learning, the expectation that we've shared all the way through is that we may know exactly what we're planning for on day one of instruction, but we always needed to be planning for the time when in-person instruction could happen. And so we've never excluded any individual who's had that question or asked about an accommodation in the event that in-person instruction were happening. So could things change in terms of HR requests to HR? They could, but we've been sharing all along in terms of if you feel that you need an accommodation for whatever reason, Ms. Williams and the HR department has not turned away that discussion or that conversation for staff members. So I feel like we do know which staff members would not be able to return to in-person instruction if in-person instruction were the option that we moved to.
Okay, I appreciate that. And again, I just want to end on a positive note and thank you for all the planning that went into this. It clearly shows that you've taken just the needs of the diverse needs of our kids and of our families and of our staff into consideration. I think this is a really thoughtful option. So I'm interested to see how we move forward. I appreciate it. I'll wait for my turn next time around. Thank you.
Vice President Miller, can I get a motion to extend the meeting before I let you go?
Well, I suppose you could. I'd like to move that we extend do we want to just do for 30 minutes or do you think we need the whole 15?
No, we're going to need another hour probably.
Well, I would like to move that we extend our meeting for 30 minutes twice.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion, a second to extend our meeting for a total of an hour. Are there any questions or discussion regarding that motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
We have two students who are in the audience, so the first one can come up. And please state your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Isabel Churchill, 1541 Highland Avenue. I'm a junior at Beloit Memorial High School, and lately it feels like we've been very alone and that you could care less about us. If you look at the schools in a 50-mile radius, they are playing sports and attending in-school learning 1 to 2 times a week. We think that this school board is more worried about the physical health more than the mental health of our students. Our mental health has took a very hard toll on our physical health. I have never in my life failed a term, and I'm willing to fail the rest of my terms, and I have no social interactions at school, and I'm forced to stay home and do all school by myself with no help. I have no motivation left, and you have made it very, very difficult for me to want to try anymore simply because school feels like an option.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kylie Arn, 728 North Hill Road. I'm a senior at Beloit Memorial High School. I was a 4.0 student who I'm ready pretty much to lose my grade point average. Because school doesn't feel like school. I have no motivation left to do it. It seems as though you don't really want us in school. It doesn't seem like a priority. Are you really all that confident in the people you're sending out into the world? Are you confident that we'll really make it with all the setbacks you're putting us up against?
I really hope you know that if you say no or postpone a decision tonight, my family and multiple others will start having serious conversations about leaving the school district. We are us high schoolers, and we are the least affected group. And are you willing to ruin an entire generation of kids' education for a disease that information changes by the day, all the time? Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Board Member Jacobs.
I'm here. Thank you. Dr. Kieser, first of all, I want to apologize for not thanking you before when I spoke earlier. I know that you and your team have done a wonderful job. And I also want to say that I have every faith in your ability moving forward. I'm glad to know that a parent survey will go out if we would go ahead and bring in-person back. I do have one question before I'd like to make a motion, and that question is, do we know how many students we have lost this school year to other districts since fall?
I would have to look up what our open enrollment numbers are, but I do have those open enrollment numbers.
Okay, thank you. And I should have, I didn't think to ask that ahead of time, and I apologize. I would like to make a motion. And
there are still people waiting to ask questions.
I'm sorry, you can't interrupt a motion.
I make a motion for the School District of Beloit to begin a hybrid model beginning January 22nd with the superintendent's ability while doing an in-person instructional model to call a school closure due to staffing shortage, and that the superintendent will reopen the school once the shortage is eliminated. That was long.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to begin a hybrid model for January 22nd, term 3, with the consideration B from slide 7, allowing the superintendent to close the school due to staffing issues and reopen it once that staffing issue has been eliminated. Are there any questions or comments regarding the motion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, Board Member Leavy.
Thank you. So a couple of things. One, it sounds like we're trying to resolve policy through a motion that needs to happen under, I believe it's 723.1 Rule 1. Which we rewrote 723.1, I believe, at our last meeting to change the authority from the superintendent to the board. That policy still needs to be cleaned up, and we need to address closures and reopening specifically in Rule 1. And just a clarifying question for Dr. Kieser. Dr. Kieser, if I'm understanding you correctly, the hybrid that you're proposing, am I correct in repeating what you said, that you would only be interested in moving forward to that once we enter phase 2?
That's what I proposed in the model tonight.
Okay, thank you so much. And since a number wasn't able to be given to me for a metric, I did some digging. So we are currently in phase 1. And the criteria for being able to move to phase 2 is that if 50% of benchmarks that entered phase 1 as yellow improve to green and there are no reds, then like Monopoly, you can move forward to phase 2. And if you pair that with what is red, it says that red is anything above a 10% positivity rate. So your number is 10%. So thank you for being clear about that commitment that you are not interested in a hybrid until we reach phase 2. I just want everyone to be clear that going by Rock County's phased reopening, not anything that we conjured up, that means that your positivity rate for a 14-day rolling average needs to be below 10%.
Okay, Board Member Wong, what's your question or comment regarding the motion?
It's just more of a question, and I don't want to jump out of turn here, but Dr. Kieser, is it feasibly possible for the district to get back to a hybrid model by the beginning of the second semester?
Given that this is the last week before winter break, it would be difficult to do the survey and get the information back in terms of who wants to continue with distance learning. I would say, given us the month of January and be able to start a phase in the first week in February, if the board were to approve, would be more realistic time frame.
Okay, I'd like to amend the motion to include in that as soon as, if it's not able to be done by the second semester, as soon as feasibly possible.
I would like to amend the amendment that we stick to the Rock County phased reopening so that we can address this as soon as we are under a positivity rate of 10% for that 14-day average.
Okay, the amendment doesn't have a second yet. So feasibly possible, would you be willing to accept a friendly amendment to that with a, what's the first week of February?
Are you speaking to me?
Okay, so can we say rather than as soon as possible, we say no later than February 1st?
I have a question, Board President.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll second your amendment. Yes, Board Member Leavy.
Thank you. So since I started with clarifying that Dr. Kieser was committed to the Rock County phased reopening, I think it would be negligent of us, given that this is his recommendation, to not stick with what he is requesting. And it clearly says on the website for Rock County Reopening Dashboard that you need to be under 10% in order to enter into phase 2, which would clear the way to do a hybrid model.
Thank you. So we have a motion and we have an amendment. Are there any questions or comments regarding the amendment?
Point of order.
I do.
Will 10% be included?
I have a question.
Okay. 10% is, okay. Hang on, we have a point of order with recording. Yes, Michelle.
I just need to know if you said no later than the first week in February or the 1st of February.
February 1st.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, Board Member Leavy, it sounds like you would like to amend the amendment to include 10%. Is that right?
Correct, and only because I clarified with Dr. Kieser before I stated from the website that he said that we need to be in phase 2, and you cannot enter phase 2 unless your positivity rate for that 14-day rolling average is below 10%, and that's coming from the Rock County phased reopening dashboard, if anyone wants to view that.
So is there a second for the amendment?
I'll second.
So we have a second to make, so the amendment is that it would be no later than February 1st if it is 10%. So it's adding 10% to that. So first of all, we have to avoid on that 10%. Any questions?
Okay, can I?
Okay, this is getting the amendment is 10%. We're getting like a spider here with branches and a web, and we're never gonna be able to find our way back.
I do have a question on the amendment.
So right now, the amendment is 10%. Do you have a question about the 10%, Board Member Jacobs?
I do.
Okay.
My question is this. I'm not sure I'm following because all of the other schools are already open. So how does this have anything to do with the motion?
Right, so... Right.
May I answer that?
Yes.
Thank you. So, one, we were elected to deal with the business of the School District of Beloit. So it's great when we can glean best practices for other districts. But I started this by asking Dr. Kieser if he was committed to using the Rock County phase reopening, and that the hybrid model would only be initiated once we entered phase 2. if you go to Rock County, unbiased information, not something that we came up with, in order to enter phase 2, they have the criteria of yellow has to go to green at least 50%, but you can't have any red. And a red happens if you are above 10% positivity rate.
Thank you for the explanation.
May I ask a question?
Yes. So the board secretary wants to clarify that, Board Member Leavy, your amendment is that we would go into a hybrid model no later than February 1st if we were at that 10%. So that's what your amendment is essentially doing.
I don't think we should include a date. I think a date is ridiculous.
Well,
because
you
we
can't-
don't know when we're going to be below
Okay.
10%.
But
So
that's-
no, my amendment is for 10%.
Okay, then that's not an amendment, that's a whole new motion.
No,
It's,
the amendment that you would be voting on right now is just to amend to add that the 14-day rolling average is at or below 10%. And that's what I'm trying to clarify. Was that your amendment, Board Member Leavy?
Yes.
Okay. And that was seconded by Miller, correct? Okay.
okay,
Correct.
sure.
Is it on? Okay. Dr. Kaiser, the gating criteria for the different stages in Rock County has nothing to do with the schools. You guys have the power right now to open these schools like people are begging you to. Don't let someone throw you off of that. You do not need to use any gating criteria, and if we did, no schools in Rock County would be open. This is a local decision. Don't let yourselves get tripped up here. Don't let yourself be micromanaged. Someone has to put an end to this. You do not need to use any metrics at all. As a matter of fact, the CDC and the Harvard School of Public Health use those metrics just so the districts will know how many measures, called control measures, how many measures you need to take, because there's a lot more than social distancing and masks. So please, listen to the people that have stayed here now until 10:30 tonight and open the schools without getting tripped up by anybody that's trying to throw a wrench in it. Those metrics are not supposed to be used by our district or Janesville and every other, Clinton, every other one would be out of school like we are. We've had since March to figure this out. Let's start using science. People say they're for science. Okay, let's use the science, all right? You can just say you don't care about the 10%, or the board can say they don't care about it, but someone's got to say that.
Yep.
If we're going to get these kids back in school, please be reasonable here.
Thank you. Board Secretary, can you please repeat the motion as amended that we have to vote on?
The amendment you'll be voting on is move to amend to add that the 14-day rolling average is at or below 10%. That will be your first vote.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Do we have a roll call vote, please?
Absolutely. Roll call vote, please, Board Secretary.
Wong,
Nay.
Miller,
Aye.
Leavy,
Aye.
Larson,
Nay.
Jacobs,
Nay.
Delgado,
Nay.
Anderson,
I'm sorry, was that an aye?
Aye. Let's go. Aye.
Okay, thank you. The amendment fails. So we are back to the amendment that we have to be in a hybrid no later than February 1st. Okay. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Did we have a second to that?
Yes, we did.
Could you reread the motion, please?
Yep, so the motion would be that the amendment is just adding no later than February 1st. So if the amendment passes, then the original motion would be that we must be in a hybrid model no later than February 1st.
So
Thank you so much.
I have written move to amend to move to the hybrid model no later than February 1st.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Jacobs,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Delgado,
Aye.
Anderson,
Nay.
Leavy,
Nay.
Wong,
Aye.
Miller,
Nay.
the amendment carried 4-3. Oh, didn't I? I thought I did. Larson?
Aye. All right, so the amendment carries. So now the motion is that we will be in a hybrid model no later than February 1st. Thank you. All right, roll call vote, please.
I have a question before we vote.
No, we vote on the amendment, so now we added that February 1st in.
But you voted, you amended it.
Right, we have to vote on the amendment, and then the amendment changes the main motion.
Mm-hmm.
You just voted, okay.
That's how we've done it all for years or not. Go ahead, Vice President Miller.
Thanks. So our district administration brought forward a phased-in plan, and it sounds like we've chosen collectively to disregard that plan that would bring us back in person based on the capacity and measurements that our administration has worked with our buildings to establish. So I just want to clarify that. So if we are beginning the process on February 1st, is that going to be a phased-in plan to allow us to do this safely so that we can maintain in person and not yo-yo around everywhere and get kids back like we want to? Or are we just going to go all or nothing in and utterly disregard the thoughtful plan that Dr. Kieser brought forward?
My intention would be that it would be the cohort model with the A-B days. Board Member Wong, you also made the motion. Is that your intent?
Point of order, the motion was originally made by Jacobs.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you,
It was
Board
seconded by
Secretary.
Wong.
Okay.
It was my intent actually not to do the 2 days, but since I didn't specifically say that, I guess we'll do the 2 days then?
Then may I ask another clarifying question?
Sure.
Cool. So are we all sure what we just voted on? Because there were multiple, I'm sorry, but there were multiple models that were presented. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. And it was my understanding that we were voting to approve a model that would provide us options. Dr. Kieser was going to bring us data in January so that we could move forward on some kind of in-person option, which it sounds like that was happening regardless. And so what I'm trying to understand from the board right now is I'm not sure what those of you who voted yay just voted to do, because there was more than one option. And I would like some clarification on, I guess, from Board Member Jacobs, because in your motion, you're dismissing, you didn't specify what we were doing, and there was a whole how piece that administration owns that was presented that we haven't addressed. So could you please clarify which plan everybody just voted for, and whether or not we're going to honor the capacity that was brought forward by your administration and allow us to phase this in?
Okay,
No. It was an amendment, so they had to vote on the amendment separately.
my motion was to begin the hybrid modeling beginning, mine original was the 22nd. Then Board Member Wong asked for it to be February 1st. So I'm not quite sure what you're asking specifically. What's it going to look like? I don't know what it's going to look like because that's administration's responsibility, not ours.
And administration brought us a plan to do
Call the
what we
question.
all, Sure.
Yes, they did. And our,
The question has been called. We need 2/3 majority to vote now and call the question and end discussion. Roll call, please.
Wait, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that so we know what we're voting on?
Yep, the question has been called, so we are voting to end discussion and vote on the motion.
And I need to know who
We just
called the
voted on
question.
the motion.
John Wong voted or called the question.
No, she said we just voted on the motion. I think that's the confusion right now.
No, we didn't vote on the motion.
The motion was to open up and
No, we voted, Board Member Leavy, we voted on an amendment. We didn't vote on the main motion. We voted
Okay, so
on the
here's the
amendment.
thing, Board President, please watch your tone because I'm an adult and that was not acceptable for me. Really, that wouldn't be acceptable for a child either.
Okay, Board Member Leavy, I'm sorry, it's a two-way street, okay? Now, the question has been called. The question has been called. We need a roll call vote to call the question, please.
I don't have an inappropriate.
You're out of order, Board Member Leavy, you're out of
And
order. Board Member Leavy, you're out of order. No, called, the question has been called. Roll call vote, please.
Sorry, the
is it
computer's
okay
not.
to say I don't understand what that means?
So it means that
Point of
discussion is ended. And, right, so now we're voting to end discussion and vote on the main motion. So we need 2/3 majority. Okay? To call the question.
And calling the question supersedes anything else.
Mm-hmm.
If this vote fails, then you can have more discussion. If this vote passes, discussion is over, and you would vote on the main motion with the amendment included of having it in place by February 1st.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, so we need a roll call now to call the question, please.
Yes. Jacobs.
To end the discussion, aye.
Leavy.
Nay.
Wong.
Aye.
Anderson.
Nay.
Delgado.
Nay.
Larson.
Aye.
Miller.
Nay.
That motion to end discussion failed.
Point of order.
Yes, Vice President Miller.
We seem to have lost track of we put a question mark in the chat box norm that allows people to take turns to speak. And I think that we need to be considerate of how we're treating each other, particularly in front of children. I'm embarrassed right now, very uncomfortable with what's happening.
Could you be specific?
No, we're not going to be specific. All right. We're not here to put adult feelings in front of the kids. All right? So we're moving on to, it looks like the first person who, Board Member Anderson has a question here at 10:26.
So I just want clarification on, is it going to be a phased opening where I just don't want it rushed. When you rush into things, that's when things start getting chaotic. I know Dan's heard me use this the saying before, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. If we go in slow, things will start to pick up in speed and it will come out smooth. That is my kind of whole life goal and motto right there. I don't want to rush into something. And I want to make sure that we aren't doing that in the situation, because I mean, there are a lot of unknowns, and I really want kids back in school because they truly need that support. I know kids are struggling extremely, just quite a bit in this time, and we can't like, we can't sustain what we're currently doing, and we do need a change. But I don't want it to happen so fast that it ends up being a ball mess for us. So I want to make sure that we all know that it'll be a nice, easy transition and nothing abrupt. Because I want to make sure that everyone that's in our district is safe in doing so while we're trying to get the kids back into school.
Thank you. Vice President Miller.
Thank you very much. I would like to move to table because it sounds like there's a lot of confusion about what we are voting on. And I think that it sounds like all of us have reached some kind of consensus that a reopening plan is coming, but it sounds like there are a lot of feelings and confusion that are driving the current conversation. So I would like to move to table the current motion.
Is there a second?
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to table. Any other questions or discussion regarding the motion to table?
I have a question. I believe Board Member Miller wants to postpone and not table, but I could be wrong. I would like clarification. Thank you.
I appreciate the clarification. You are correct. I would like to move to postpone, and I appreciate the clarification.
When would you like to postpone it to?
The next earliest board meeting that we can. So our next business meeting might be a bit too late. Are we planning a meeting the 5th?
Well, we have the 6th, we're choosing the superintendent candidates. Then we're doing interviews. We're doing interim superintendent Keyser's evaluation the second Tuesday, followed by 2 nights of first round interviews, which will then go into deliberation. So I think we can try to squeeze in is it the 12th, January 12th?
I missed the last, I'm sorry, when was that?
I believe it's January 12th. Is that the second Tuesday? Okay, it's January 12th would be the second Tuesday.
May I ask a question of Dr. Keyser?
Yes.
Dr. Keyser, when were you planning, if we were able to approve a plan tonight, and you said you were going to come back to us in January, and with data, and then we were going to make a determination on moving forward. What date did you have in mind for that?
If the board voted on the consideration for bringing back a plan, it would have been in the 4th, would have been the end of the first semester there.
So do you feel that January 12th is an appropriate amount of time for you to know which direction we're going in terms of a plan for you to bring that data forward?
If the direction was to bring forward a plan for the board to vote on, and so if the board would like me to have data by the 12th, I will have the data by the 12th.
So then I guess I would move to postpone the adoption of a model at least until January 12th. And if Dr. Keyser is able to then have the data for us, maybe we can knock them out at the same time.
Though the thing that I will share is that once a decision is made, there needs to be time to make those shifts. We planned on a 4-week shift, and so if this being the last week of the before winter break, it would be 4 weeks, and so it'd be that last week of the semester, the first week in February, that we would be moving in, whether it be phased or all in at once. It wouldn't matter.
Thank you so much for the clarification. So then my motion then is to postpone until the January 12th meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any other question or discussion regarding the motion to table until January 12th?
I have a question.
Board Member Jacobs, Board Member Wong put a question in first. Oh, did she? Sorry, I have no idea.
Wait. Is it me?
Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. My question is this. When we're thinking of tabling it, my question is, what is our board role? And I'm thinking we're elected officials, and I believe that we've clearly heard from the public. We've heard from students. To me, it's very clear what we need to do. And Dr. Kieser, if I'm incorrect, and please tell me if I am, if we postpone it till, was it the 12th, Dr. Kieser?
Correct.
You'd still be able to rock and roll by February 1st, if that was the motion then and we decided to go that way, correct?
I would need to start prepping for that now so that if the decision was made and the turnaround time was 2 weeks, it would, I could try to make that happen. No guarantees.
Right. Wouldn't it be better though if we would decide tonight and then you'd have 6 weeks to work through logistics to go a hybrid?
That would be ideal.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Wong.
Yeah, postponing this is not gonna, I mean, this district, for everybody's knowledge, and I think we know this, has been bleeding students. And next year we have another school going up. I mean, we can't continue to put up roadblocks or more reasons for people to leave our district. I mean, our action is highly necessary, and we've heard it from it tonight, and we've heard it from people out in the public as well. We have to make a decision on this tonight. If we're going to do this, we need to give them ample amount of time to make the preparation. And as he had stated, 6 weeks is much more in favor than 2 or 3 weeks. So, just my comment.
Board Member Delgado.
Can I just ask Dr. Kieser to reinstate what was his recommendation and what he wanted for us to do today? If he wanted an approval to open the schools in February, or he just wanted guidance. That's where I'm a little confused, because there has been so much discussion and a lot of discussion that have really, I think, confused a lot of us. So I want to hear from Dr. Kieser without the interaction of anyone else, but I want him to clearly state what he wanted us to do today.
With the passage of the new board policy around reopening during a health crisis, the direction is that I bring forward a plan for the board to consider and ultimately may approve. They can alter the plan. The board has the approval of the plan. So I brought forward an update to the model based on what, working with the administrative team, working with the school administrators and BEA, and that's what I presented tonight. So the policy, I feel, is pretty clear. The board makes the decision on what the direction of the district moving forward is. The motion so I did bring forward a plan. The motion that's on the table is to move forward with moving into the hybrid model by the last week in January, because February 1st is a Monday. There is also another motion to postpone that decision until January 12th, with me bringing more data in the form of the survey with information. So that's what's on the table. The plan is off to the side. There's 2 motions that are before the board for consideration. February 1st.
Let me ask.
Point of order. I just need to clarify that in Board Member Jacobs's original order, she also had in there that if a school closure is due to a staffing shortage, that the superintendent will reopen as soon as the staffing shortage is eliminated. That was also part of the original motion.
Thank you for the clarification.
And my second question is, how comfortable do you feel to open schools without being in phase 2? What would be your recommendation?
The data that we have is that schools have been open in phase 2 and in phase 1. So if the board's decision is to reopen, we will be able to reopen following our guidance.
And let me just clarify that most schools open in August, and that's when we were still in phase 1. Am I correct to say that? I mean, I'm sorry, that's when we were in phase 2, not in phase 1, because we went into phase 2, into phase 1, like probably like in October, somewhere there, but schools were already open in phase 2. So that's when they made that decision.
Yes, in September when schools opened, we were in phase 2. We moved into phase 1 in early November.
Okay, Vice President Miller, did you?
I did, yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak again. So what I'm hearing overall is that Dr. Kieser and his team brought forward a model that they feel most confident about effectively implementing. The goal here is to get our kids back as safely as possible and as effectively as possible. What I've heard tonight in discussion has been a lot of confusion and a lot of feelings, and I think that we owe it to everybody to step back. We're not really losing time or putting up any barriers to simply approve the model that we've been asked to approve at a later date. Things will still move forward, and what Board Member Delgado just clarified with Dr. Kieser is all the more reason that I think we need to take a moment and really consider how possible it is for us to go back in phase 1 when most Rock County schools, I believe, voted recently to shut down between Thanksgiving and winter break and are resuming instruction January 18th. So I don't think it's accurate to say that everybody's in person right now. So anyway, that's kind of my pitch. I think we need to postpone, and I don't believe that that places any barriers to getting students safely back into in-person instruction in some capacity.
Okay, Board Member Jacobs, your hand is raised on Google Meet. Do you have anything to add, or is that old?
Sorry, I was having problems with my mute. It's old. I'm taking it down.
Thank you. So are there any other questions or discussion regarding the motion to postpone until January 12th? See none. Let's roll call vote, please. All in favor? Roll call. Chris going to do it every way.
Okay, Larson.
Nay.
Leavy.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Jacobs.
Nay.
Miller.
Aye.
Delgado.
Aye.
Wong.
Nay.
A motion to postpone passed.